Edwin, thank you so much for being a part of this today. Okay. The first question I want to ask is, you are known as the greatest 400-meter hurdler ever. And I know you get this all the time. And a record that stood for a phenomenal 9 years, 9 months, and 9 days. Okay. I can only imagine what the single-minded focus and was needed to achieve that sort of consistency. What I want to know is that, what were the small, tiny habits that you think played a vital part in the discipline that you needed to be so consistent over such a period of time? There's just tiny things every single day that made that difference.
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. It's the things that I did every day, day in and day out. And I had different elements that I had to accomplish all the time. I never thought about racing when I was training. I thought about the different elements, which could be speed endurance, speed work, the flexibility program, weightlifting, cross country at the golf course, cross country in the beach at the sand, middle distance running like 1000s and 800s. And so I had a system where I had 4 to 5 elements that I had to do every day. And none of them independently had anything to do with the race, but they all had to be executed at a high level all the time. And so I had a different approach, whereas I looked at what I was doing more as an art form and putting different elements together. Like a ballet dancer, you work on your jumps, you work on your stretching, you work on your graceful movements. And so I looked at running like that. I didn't look at it as, I've got to get on the start line, I've got to run against this person, and I've got to win this race in that kind of time. I never looked at it from that point of view.
It was never that.
No,
okay.
It was things that I did every day consistently that had nothing to do with running track and racing around the track.
Fantastic. Leading on from that, I've said this before, you were one of the pioneers of sports science and high performance. You looked at it when no one else. And if you go back along the line, your name stands out, and the other is Sir Roger Bannister, who meticulously broke up that mile into 4 parts, understood the science behind it, and that's how he was able to break the 4-minute mile. When no one else is looking in something, it takes a true visionary to do that. So what inspired you to do that, and who motivated you and who guided you to look into your art form in that manner?
Well, I grew up as an academic family. My father was a scientist, chemist in biology, wanted to be a doctor, but went into education. So, and eventually I got my degree in physics and went into aerospace engineering, working on missiles and rockets and all that. So I paid attention to details, biology, physiology, stretching, and even in the world where we didn't have an internet, you had to go to the library and chase down a book, through the stacks. I was able to do that back in the 70s and find really good books on training that were hard to get and read up on it. And, as I said, I did rocket science and all that when I was working in the aerospace. And I've always had a saying, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure a lot of these things out, but doesn't help doesn't help it if you are one either.
Yeah.
So I use intellectual and academic, curiosity to learn a lot of things that I didn't know anything about. Today, for the kids that are growing up today who want to be athletes, they can go online if they want to do plyometrics and see someone doing the exercises. So there's no excuse for anyone today who wants to be a world-class athlete. You can go on and look up physiotherapy and almost anything you want.
True.
So for an athlete who wants to be great today, the resources are unlimited.
As a sports scientist, one of the most neglected components that we still feel is not looked into sport is the science of recovery and the art of recovery. Everyone is looking at training methodologies, interval training, fast twitch training, plyometrics, as you said, strength conditioning, but recovery is not in their arsenal. Were you looking at recovery?
I was looking completely at recovery.
What were you doing?
Well, I was one of the first people that had a heart rate monitor.
Okay.
I got it back in probably, might have been even 79, 80 from Polar, one of the first models. I still have, the original one at home. But, and I used a computer back in probably 83 is when I started logging heartbeat, heart rate information with position on my cross-country runs. I had the whole thing measured out. Physical therapy. I had an outstanding physical therapist. I had a great stretching program. So it just, nutrition was another area that I thought was absolutely vital that most athletes never thought of. And even, I actually wanted to be a biomedical engineer, and I was the first generation of athletes to really take a look at dynamics, computerized dynamics, because I was studying the classical form of physics and engineering, where we had to write all the equations on paper if we wanted to get a solution before the video camera was able to do it. I would have been the one who would have been programming the computers to do the calculations. So I had a great understanding of that and studying applied and classical physics. So that gave me an advantage.
Speaking of nutrition, was there use of supplements there during those days, or was it just clean eating?
No, I think if you wanted to use supplements back then and you were a track athlete, you know, you might have to go get Flintstone vitamins because there wasn't that much out there. They didn't have the, you know, the big industry that they have now. People just took a regular multivitamin. I didn't do that. I never used vitamins. I did have one supplement that I got, my physical therapist got, that was used in the space program for NASA. It was like 1,000 calories per quart. They were using it in space, you know, to feed astronauts. And I had access to that. 1 quart, well, a liter, 1,000 calories, and I was using 4,000 or 5,000 a day. So that helped a lot, because when you train as hard as I was, 2-3 sessions, you can't possibly eat.
You can't eat 4,000 calories.
You can't eat 4,000. You certainly can't eat it before, during, and even after. It takes, you know, 2-3 hours before you can eat. So I had the advantage of probably getting 2,000 a day of really highly researched, you know, space program stuff. So I was, but everything else was food, vegetables, and looking at what kind of vegetables and what kind of minerals and so forth that was necessary.
I want to just take it a little bit away. You're the chairman of the Laureus Academy, and there's something that always, one of my favorite quotes is by a fellow South African, our former Prime Minister, President Nelson Mandela, who on your stage said that sport has the power to change the world, it has the power to inspire. As a chairman of the Laureus and an ambassador of athletics, what do you think is the way forward for sport to be truly free and fair? What do we need to do so that we can build this ecosystem of free and fair sport?
Well, I think for example, the Mumbai Standard Chartered Marathon is a great vehicle for just getting people active and moving around. That I would suppose that there's thousands of people that 2, 3, 5 years ago, or maybe even 6 months ago, would have never thought that they would run a half marathon or a 6K. So that in itself is important. You know, the elite activity in sport is completely different. So it's just important for people to participate. Good for their health, good for their fitness, well-being, teaching them about diet. And I think that's what sports is about. At one level.
The vision for the Laureus Academy is to use sport for social change. And what can our federations, our associations, other sporting foundations in a country do to align their vision so that we're all moving it forward? Because sport can truly change the moral fiber of a nation, you know. So how do we align this vision so that, you know, the fabric of our people are getting better?
Well, here in India, I've had several people comment and ask me what is it that we can do to get, you know, more kids at the world-class level, and it starts with the grassroots, because you have a lot of kids out there that that need something to do, that need a discipline, that want to go into an area where they have someone who's talking to them about discipline, fair play, motivating them. It can help them in school. So you have to look at the whole system. It's not just about hitting a ball with the cricket bat, or running a world record, or any kind of sport accomplishment, but it's a whole system, and you can inspire kids if you go out and find them. In a city the size of Mumbai, there are hundreds of thousands of kids out there that probably don't have the outlet, and that's where the sports bodies can come in and help their community and find great talent as well.
Fantastic. Staying with Africa, I just want to ask you one last question before we wrap up. Is the African 400-meter hurdler, John Akibua, was the first man to break 48 seconds. You were going to have the opportunity to race against him in 1976.
Correct.
But they boycotted that event. And in an interview that I read, you mentioned something fascinating, that even though he wasn't there, right, you still had his record time in your mind, and that was the target to beat, not the person next to you. You had that infection. So how does an athlete, when something is not tangible in front of you, how do you focus on that there? How do athletes look at the bigger picture and have that relentless drive to achieve something?
Well, I saw Akibua in '72 at the Munich Games, and I was probably my third year in college. Yeah, third year in high school. I was 16, 17 years old during the Olympics, and he became my hero. I had just started running, actually getting better at hurdles like the year before and that year. So I was we didn't have 400 hurdles. We didn't even have 300. We had 180-yard lows. That was as far as you can run. So he was my hero. When he won the Olympics, he was the guy that I wanted to be like. Little did I know, 4 years later, I would be fixated on him from a performance point of view, that he was actually my target, and that every day that I went out and trained, and every night when I went to sleep, I was thinking about John Akibua, his world record, and what I'm going to have to do every day incrementally to get to that point. And it was absolutely no joke. I mean, you just don't wake up one day and say, I'm going to break the world record, and you've only been running the event for 4 weeks or 6 weeks. So it's very, very serious. I was serious about it, and I knew the talent that I had, because I was a very good high hurdler. 13.6, 13.5. I ran the 400 flat, went from a 47.5 at the end of one year, first race of the next year, 46.1. Then I was running 45. So I knew that I had the potential to do it, and just had to put together a program. But he was the inspiration of it all.
Yes, he was a true
Right.
hero coming out of
Right,
Africa.
and I had a chance to meet him and run against him later in his career, but he was not running well, 50 points, 49s, but we became very good friends.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Something that you said that's really, truly fascinating is it's those incremental things that you do every single day, and that's what makes a champion. It's the small things that you add. To wrap up with, what advice would you like to give to any aspiring? I'm a sports scientist, so I'm very interested in performance. I'm interested in gaining that 0.2% difference that's between gold and silver, because I know the difference between gold and silver is gold and anonymity, to be honest. So from a true living legend, what advice can I use to my athletes, and can they aspire to?
I think I like to inspire athletes really at a philosophical and theoretical level versus like, this is what you have to do to train. And you as a scientist, you know the importance of calculus, differential equations, when you're looking at infinitesimal areas of a sphere or surface area, and all those things matter. So my philosophy has always been to find the small things and correct them and keep them corrected, and have an overall big picture at the same time. But it's the details that I found that other athletes weren't paying attention to. Small details.
Attention to detail.
Yeah. For example, running on a turn, with a radius of 100 meters, the lanes are 36 inches across, so almost 1 meter. They measure the lane from 8 inches from the inside.
Yes.
If you run on the outside of the curve, you're running 4 to 8 feet longer on one turn. So if you do that on 2 turns and you're running on the outside of your lane, you're giving me a 12 to 15 foot head start, and you don't even know it.
Yes. Attention.
So it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, but it helps to know those little things.
Yes,
so
yes.
I was always on the inside of my curve, I used to let them run on the outside. So they're giving me 10 feet from the start.
Fantastic.
So I
So
looked
thank
at
you
it
very
that
much.
way.
It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.